While our attention is fixated on Ukraine, we might be facing a second crisis as tensions are mounting between Greece and Turkey. And to make things even more complicated, both are NATO members. It's not the first time Greece and Turkey are saber-rattling over control on the Aegean Sea. Since 1992, 5 Turkish and 6 Greek pilots have been killed or wounded in dogfights, aerial provocations, and accidents. In September, the president of Turkey, Erdogan, threatened neighboring Greece, saying that Turkey would suddenly come one night, and that when the time comes, Turkey will do what is necessary. He was referring to the 1974 Turkish invasion of Cyprus. What made things even worse is that in July, Erdogan's nationalist ally Devlet Bahçeli happily posed with a map depicting half of Greece's Aegean islands, including Crete, as Turkish territory. And then he doubled down, claiming that the maritime jurisdiction and airspace of multiple Greek islands undoubtedly and legally belong to Turkey. This is part of Turkey's new maritime doctrine, nicknamed the Blue Homeland, suggesting that Turkey is allowed to lay claim to the entire eastern half of the Aegean Sea. And why shouldn't we believe Erdogan's threats? Remember how he brought up the idea of establishing a security zone in the north of Syria continuously for 4 years before intervening militarily in 2016. And to add to these threats, this year Turkey will commission a new 27,000-ton amphibious assault ship, the TCG Anadolu, that can board both helicopters, UAVs, and landing crafts. And if it wasn't enough, Greece and Turkey might even go to war for a tiny island, for the control of a tiny 9 square kilometer island called Castellorizzo. I'm sure you have many questions, so before we start with a historical background of this conflict, a quick word from our sponsor. I'm presenting you today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is a free-to-play online military vehicle combat game. It's fully cross-platform, so you can play with all your friends whether they use PC, Xbox Series S and X, or PlayStation 5. I really appreciate how War Thunder models all its vehicles with over 2,000 historically accurate tanks, helicopters, aircraft, and ships, and that let you participate in battles through more than 100 years of history. Engage in combat arms battles with 50 million other players in 100 maps, ranging from World War II to the end of the Cold War. What I love the most about War Thunder, it's its detailed damage. Forget general hit points. Tanks suffer actual damage to their components and crew instead. A damage X-ray shows exactly what happens to you or your enemy vehicles as they're destroyed or damaged. Click on the link in the description and play for free. And get your free bonus for registering a premium tank, aircraft, or ship, as well as a 3-day account boost. I will see you on the War Thunder battlefield. Historical background. Of course, you can trace back the conflict between Greece and its neighbor for centuries, even millennia if you want. But let's fast forward to the early 1900s. By that time, the Ottoman Empire had been on a slow decay. Suddenly, in 1912, 4 Balkan states, Greece, Serbia, Montenegro, and Bulgaria, declared war upon the Ottoman Empire. This Balkan coalition defeated the Ottomans and stripped them from the bulk of their European provinces, including many islands in the Aegean going to Greece. The troubles for the Ottoman Empire were only starting. By 1918, the Ottoman Empire was only a shadow of its former self. The empire was at its weakest, and the Allied powers, Britain, France, Italy, and Greece, all laid territorial claims on Anatolia, the heartland of Turkey, in an attempt to carve out a piece of the cake for themselves. For Greece, the temptation to snatch some land of its neighbor was too tempting. And in 1919, Greece even disembarked a 20,000-strong army at Smyrna, modern-day Izmir, a region at the time home to hundreds of thousands of ethnic Greeks, hoping to march on the new Turkish capital, Ankara, to conquer land they claimed as part of ancient Greece and the Byzantine Empire. That would have been an easy task had it not been for Kemal Atatürk. Atatürk picked up the ashes of the Ottoman army and made a new Turkish army out of it, and stopped the Greek army right at the gates of Ankara. By 1923, he had defeated the Greeks and pushed back all foreign interventions. Although victorious, now Atatürk wanted a long-lasting peace for his new country. And this is where we enter modern-day business. Turkey and Greece signed the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923. which established a fixed frontier on the Aegean Sea. Athens retained most of the major islands of the Turkish coastline, but promised that no naval base and no fortifications will be established on these territories. The treaty also limited the amount of gendarmes and soldiers on the Greek islands. Ataturk's gamble was successful, and in the end both countries even became close friends. That is, until the end of World War II, when Italy ceded control of the Dodecanese Islands to Greece. Despite Turkey's objections at the 1947 Treaty of Paris, Rome awarded these 12 islands to Athens. Turkey then expected Greece to uphold the Treaty of Lausanne. The promise that Greek sovereignty on Rhodes, Castellorizzo, and other islands should remain demilitarized. Greece responded that the Dodecanese Islands were not subject to the Treaty of Lausanne, which is legally true since they were not yet Greek territory when it was signed in 1923. And let me tell you, from there, the situation between both countries just went down the drain. Garbage. So the two countries were roasting over a barbecue when history decided to turn it up a notch. With Cyprus, an island off the coast of Turkey, home to 500,000 inhabitants, 80% Greek Cypriots, and 20% of Turkish origin. The divide widened when the island got its independence from Britain in 1960, and both communities were essentially at war. This event could take an entire video in itself, but in summary, Greece orchestrated a coup in Cyprus in order to unite both countries into a big Greece. However, a couple days after the coup, Turkey intervened militarily in 1974. In the end, they were victorious on a battlefield, and as a fait accompli, they partitioned the island, the south for Greeks and the north for Turks. Then in 1995, the Greek parliament ratified the United Nations Law of the Sea, which allowed states to declare jurisdiction over coastal waters up to a 12-mile radius. As you can imagine, that turned every tiny Greek island of the Aegean Sea into a strategic position. And it's not a surprise that Turkey was part of a handful of nations that opposed this UN agreement. And soon after, both countries came to fists. Turkey and Greece deployed warships, aircraft, and troop detachments in anticipation of military operations. Both countries were ready to go to war for inhabited rocks in the middle of the sea. It was only shuttle diplomacy by the US which stopped the escalations and returned the situation to an enduring and frosty stalemate. And remember, both are NATO members. 1995-1996 should have been the last time that both countries went to arms. In 2010, natural gas was discovered in the eastern Mediterranean and large deposits right off the coast of the island of Cyprus. Once again, Turkey complained about its restricted access to the Aegean seafloor, thus denying Ankara the ability to explore for oil and gas underneath the continental shelf. But they did so anyway. Escalation. Now we have the entire recipe for war: historical enemies, disputed borders, and lucrative natural resources. This year, Athens asserted there had been an unprecedented number of incursions into its airspace by Turkish jets, both in April and May. And in early August, Turkey launched a new drilling ship bound for contested waters in the East Mediterranean. And if Cyprus is part of the problem, the other problem is this tiny island we spoke about, Castellorizzo. The tiny island essentially cuts in half the exclusive economic zone claimed by Turkey and seriously limits the legality of Turkish natural gas drilling expeditions. And while all this is going on, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan not only accused Greece of putting a military presence on supposedly demilitarized islands, but the Turkish foreign minister warned that if Greece refuses to demilitarize its Aegean islands, that Greek sovereignty over these territories would be considered debatable, referring to the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne. As proof that Greece is in fact militarizing, a month ago on September 25, Turkish media published drone photos showing Greek ships disembarking military equipment. 23 tactical wheeled armored vehicles on Lesbos and 18 to Samos. Turkish commentators then suggested that Greek forces attempt to blockade Turkey, and for that purpose Greece built many military bases all along the Turkish coastline. Turkey claims that over 30,000 Greek soldiers are garrisoned on the islands of Chios, Lesbos, Samos, Rhodes, and Tylos. These positions are considered strategic because Izmir, Turkey's third largest city with a population of 4.3 million inhabitants, is within striking distance of these islands. And historically speaking, the Greek invasion of 1919 was carried out from these islands straight into Anatolia. Now, what the Turkish media is not saying is that they're not certain about troop numbers and that the latest figures date back from 1991. They also cannot prove that Greece has increased the number of its soldiers deployed in the Aegean since 1991. And as for the drone footage, we saw armored vehicles, some sort of Humvees. It's not as if they disembarked HIMARS, howitzers, some artillery pieces, anti-ship missiles, or tanks, for example. And then there's a lot of activity on Twitter where Turkish commentators show, for example, military bases and airfields being packed with troops. But to me, all this is not convincing. And militarily speaking, Turkey has such a numerical advantage on Greece that to me it seems very strange to even consider a possible Greek invasion of Western Anatolia. At the same time, there is some truth to what Ankara suggests, since Athens itself asserted its legal right to garrison some islands, particularly those in the northern Aegean, due to the threat of a Turkish invasion. And all this as a reminder because of a treaty signed 100 years ago, armed confrontation. What would a Turkish military intervention look like? The first step to watch out for is if Turkey legally charges Greece with violating the Lausanne and Paris treaties, thus cancelling Greek sovereignty over these territories. According to several former senior officers of the Turkish Navy, Turkey could then either impose a naval blockade on some Greek islands, or outright disembark some troops in the hopes of removing suspected bases and weaponry, aka the famous demilitarization. In the past few years, Turkey significantly increased its projection power. For example, in 2020, Turkey managed to airlift a total of 18,000 Syrian mercenaries to Libya. If they send that many to Libya, they could do the same to another territory. The Turkish Navy also has significant amphibious capabilities. Apart from a multitude of small landing crafts, it has two large SLTs commissioned in 2017 and 2018, and plans to build another 2 units. Each of these vessels can disembark around 500 troops. And then there is the Anadolu that can airlift about 400 troops at a time and carry up to 2,400 marines. So the first wave of an invasion could consist of around 3,000 Turkish soldiers. Now, considering the proximity of Turkish ports to Greek islands, these LSTs could do multiple trips back and forth. So roughly 24,000 Turkish soldiers could be transported within the first 24 hours. These troops could be drawn from the Turkish Navy's Amphibious Marine Brigade, which consists of 4,500 men based near Izmir. Paracommandos could also be used to secure ports and airfields to allow the arrival of subsequent reinforcements from the 4th Army based on the Aegean, which is approximately 130,000 strong. So 130,000 men available with a transportation capability of 24,000 men every 24 hours. The entire 4th Army could be disembarked on Greek islands within a week. So yes, Turkey can effectively launch an amphibious operation against Greek islands, especially since these territories are much closer to Turkey than they are from the Greek mainland. So Ankara will have an advantage supplying and sending reinforcements compared to Athens. Now, for this invasion to be a success, Turkey would have to take over Chios, Lesbos, Samos, Rhodes, Kos, and Tylos at the same time. And here's the catch. Take a look at this deployment map of the Hellenic army, aka the Greek army. Do you notice all these green dots, all these units based on islands, literally off the Turkish coastline? NG stands for National Guard Higher Command. Let me tell you, I was shocked. I took a look at the structure of all these NGs and they regroup around 6,000 to 7,000 men each. 6,000 men on average on 6 islands is 36,000 men. So perhaps Turkey was right, but Greece also did so for a reason. The rationale is that the more troops are deployed on these islands, the less likely Turkey is to launch an invasion. So for a successful invasion of these 6 islands, Turkey would need at least a 3-to-1 advantage. That means an invasion force of around 100,000 Turkish soldiers. And that's only if not a single Turkish troop transport gets sunk or damaged. So in this scenario, we're not even taking into account Greek naval and aerial capabilities. And logically speaking, with 3 major troop transport, Turkey could only attack 3 islands at the same time at most. Imagine these 3 islands and imagine one of these troop transports gets damaged. The invasion for this island is over. And of course, because of the scale of this military operation, it would be impossible for Turkey to camouflage such an invasion force. And take a look at these Greek military units in the north. This is where the elite of the Hellenic army is positioned. If Turkey attacks the Aegean Islands, do you think that these Greek units will just stand still? Or could they rush for Istanbul? So that would mean that Turkey would also have to attack from Thrace. And then it's a full-on war, just like in Ukraine. Is it really worth it? Is it really what Erdogan wants? That's why Turkey might in fact target the weak spot of Greek defenses. There are 2 scenarios. Scenario number 1. Turkey could launch a naval blockade of Castellorizzo to put pressure on Athens in an attempt to renegotiate the Lausanne Treaty. But this would likely end up just like in 1996, just with harsher European and US sanctions. And scenario number 2. Cyprus. Remember, the country of Cyprus is not part of NATO. A Turkish attack would be condemned by the international community, but there could be enough wiggle room for Turkey to maneuver diplomatically. More importantly, the Turkish armed forces maintains the Cyprus-Turkish Peace Force, which consists of around 30,000 to 40,000 troops from the Turkish 9th Army Corps, plus an 8,000 strong force primarily made up of conscripted Turkish Cypriots. Overall, we're talking about nearly 40 to 50,000 men. It is likely that the Turkish invasion of the Greek part of the island would be pre-prepared by a strengthening of the Turkish forces in the north of Cyprus. But let's be honest, it would be much less apparent than preparing a full-on invasion force aimed at the Aegean Islands. And that way, Turkish amphibious vessels would not have to prepare a beach landing, but simply go back and forth between the Turkish mainland and Cyprus to resupply and send reinforcements. For Turkey, having full control over Cyprus would mean that their entire exclusive economic zone and the very precious underwater natural gas fields would come under Turkish control as well. And the big question here is, would Greece intervene if Cyprus was attacked? And in that case, if Turkey and Greece are now at war, what would France do? Since the Hellenic and the French Republic have signed a mutual defense pact in 2021. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. If you get a chance, remember to support the channel by using the link in the description to download War Thunder for free and earn exclusive rewards.